thing about it is that what they do is they're constantly denying that the pain and the anguish that they are suffering is big enough. It's big enough that it is enough. It is enough for them to raise their hand and go get that help.
Dude, I'm like shaking. So yes, 100%. It makes sense.
Every time we talk about something like this, I'm like, oh, I didn't deploy. I didn't go through anything, so I didn't struggle, but I know I did.
This is the Just One More Podcast starring Chris Jacobs and Carlos Kopszywa.
All right. Welcome to episode 9 of the Just One More Podcast. I am Chris Jacobs.
I'm Carlos Kopszywa.
And if you've noticed, we've got a different format here. We're trying some things. We're going to mix some stuff up, try and make this a little more appealing, just or easier to navigate. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is Antonio. He owns owns and runs a group called Frontline Strong.
Yes, sir. Which
is a program that's used to empower veterans and first responders. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm Antonio Santana. I founded a nonprofit called Frontline Strong. We provide free mental health services to veterans, first responders, and their family members. I myself was in the United States Marine Corps. I did 2 combat tours to Iraq. I was stationed in Al-Assad both times. Little Haditha Dam as well. But after I got out of the military, I went into law enforcement. So I did about 10 years in law enforcement, from corrections all the way to investigations. But at the same time too, going into getting out of law enforcement, what kind of drew me into this field of mental health and stuff like that. Because I can tell you one thing, from being in the military, being in law enforcement, mental health was nothing that ever kind of crossed my mind, or speaking up about the stuff that I was going through ever kind of made me want to like reach out and ask for help or anything like that. But right before, and I know I'm kind of jumping straight into it. I don't know if y'all are okay with that. So right before I got out of law enforcement, a year before I got out, and that's what kind of put me in through this whole mission that I am in now, is I attempted suicide on the side of the road with my service pistol. And the thing about it is that while I was doing that, and where I am now today, and I think back on those days, is that was my only solution for the shit that I was going through. The only thing that I felt was going to get me out of that rut was for me to take my own life. And I think what I think now back to that day and where I am now in my life is that I always look at it as almost, I told this to one of my buddies the other day. That day I felt as if I had a noose around my neck and I jumped off a tree. I jumped and that tree branch broke. And once that happened, it was like I wanted to live, right? But I didn't know how that was. Like I knew that I wanted to like live for my family and live for everything else, but I didn't know how that looked like. But I felt that I only wanted to live for everybody else, but I didn't want to live for myself. And I think one of the things that I've realized is that you have to live for yourself. The change can be for your family. The change can be for other people. But at the end of it, you have to do it for yourself. And that's where I am now in my life, is that I love the life that I have. I love my family. I love everything that I'm doing now. And the biggest thing that a lot of people like us have is we don't love ourselves. And I think the biggest hurdle that I had to cross was actually look at the person in the mirror and actually love them and forgive them for all the shit that they went through and all the shit that they did and all the broken hearts that left behind and everything like that. And that's where I am now, man. And I think the biggest thing that I'm trying to do with our nonprofit and with our platform that we created, Wellness Empowered, is that I'm trying to give a different viewpoint to these individuals that feel that their darkness, their pain is their only way, right? That living in this hellhole they've created for themselves is the only way to live their lives. But to me, it's like, it's not. These lies and these constant, things that we tell ourselves, it's just bullshit. because there is a better day. There is a different approach to this, not just living our lives in a way of just trying to make it, right? Enjoy your life because it is beautiful, and it's just another chapter, brother. Like in that chapter that you went through in your life, you can fucking surpass that shit. You don't need to stay there. Does that make sense?
Dude, I'm like shaking. So yes, 100%. It makes sense. So like, obviously I was in the Army. I deployed to Taji. I was with the Cav in 2004, 2005. And I was a DOD contractor, a Department of Defense contractor for a few years after that. And I got a lot of friends that have went through just absolute chaos. I wear the bracelet of a boy that was one of my best friends going through high school. He was in the Air Force. He deployed, and he took his life with a 12 gauge. And I battled it. So 2011, really, it kind of sunk me. Never got to that point, but it got to the point where I was basically almost homeless. It took me calling my aunt, asking for money, and her telling me to go pound sand for me to pull my head out of my ass and get my stuff together. But it sends a message. It really kind of like amplifies with me, because there's so many people that I deployed with. There's so many people that I know that have been impacted by suicide or have taken their own life. And, you know, when we get out of the military, the one thing I think people don't understand is that we didn't have resources. Mm-hmm. I got out in 2006. This shit wasn't even talked about. Nope. There was no PTSD. There was no transition period. You were basically thrown into a room, said, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to clear this. Then you got to clear CIF. Well, clearing CIF almost gave you worse PTSD than actually going to war. So once you clear CIF, they're like, all right, give me your ID, and you're done. You're gone. You're out. There was no transition. There was no discussion about how to recreate your life. When I got out, I had already lost my parents. I lost my mom when I was 14, my dad when I was 19, 20 years old. So I was 21 years old, getting out of the military, nowhere to go, nobody to talk to. It was like, oh shit, what the hell am I supposed to do? So first thing I could think of, where can I go make the most money and do the same shit I've been doing? Defense contracting. But when you get back from that, it was like, what am I going to do? Like I didn't have a resource.
And I think what you're touching a lot on is once we lose our identity, it's like who are we now, right? Like when I got out of law enforcement, I felt like I was a tool that was being unused, right? Like, and I didn't know what to do, right? Like, and the first thing I did was my wife basically told me, I need you to go get help. I know there's something wrong here. You know, that attempt at suicide, she never even knew about it until I was on a podcast and I talked about it, the first time ever bringing it up. And then now, like, I needed to tell my wife, right? And so I told her, and like in the back of her head, like she knew something was wrong, but she never knew it went to that extent where I was about to take my life, right? So the first thing I did is I went to the VA to go get help, and me thinking in my head, you know, okay, these guys are here to help me, right? So thinking they're gonna have their open arms. Oh, we've been waiting for you, right? Fuck no. First thing they do is want to shove pills down my throat. Mm-hmm. So we're going from this concept of being in the military, and we numb our pain with drinking every single fucking day to be able to get past and be able to live another day, right? Have some type of normalcy in our lives. And then the first day you go into the people that are supposed to help you, let me numb you further. Let me not let you feel what you're going through, right? So I started thinking about this. It's like, how, if individuals come into the VA and they don't have something like a family, or they don't have somebody that's pushing them to be able to be better, and they come in and I'll start seeing all of these barriers just stack on in front of them. What the fuck are they going to do? You think they're going to stay there and try to get that help? They're going to reach for that door and get out of there. So when we started Frontline Strong, that was one of the things that I wanted to do, is remove all of those barriers for these individuals to want to seek help. And once they raise their hand, they get the help that they need. So with me, like, so we had the last few months that I've had, we've been operational. I was talking to a couple of vets, and it's the same repeated conversation. You know, one is the concept of their story is not important. You know, I was blown up. I wasn't shot at. I wasn't this and that. And they stack up all of these reasons why their story is not important and why they shouldn't go and get the help. Because you know what? I'm not as important as that guy. But the thing about it is that what they do is they're constantly denying that the pain and the anguish that they are suffering is big enough. It's big enough that it is enough. It is enough for them to raise their hand and go get that help. So I think when we talk about identity and we talk about all these things about these individuals that have sacrificed so much for us without, that's the beauty of this country, right? The beauty of this country is that we are the ones that raise our hand and say, I will sacrifice my life for those others, right? That is the beauty of this country. We don't force people to get into the military. We put our lives on the line every single day. So now these individuals feel like their story and their selves and what they endured is not important enough to get the help that they need.
I feel like that's exactly how I feel, because I didn't deploy. I was in the Navy, but I didn't deploy or anything like that. And every time we talk about something like this, I'm like, oh, I didn't deploy. I didn't go through anything. So I didn't struggle. But inside, I know I did. I struggle now. And I put on this identity of like a goofy person, try to joke all the time. And people just think I'm this happy-go-lucky person when inside I feel that like broken up inside. And I got out in 2009. I didn't get help until last year, like, because I didn't feel like I deserve it. I was like, I didn't deploy. I didn't do this. But like I went for PTSD, even though I didn't deploy, you still have PTSD just from the military.
Yeah.
But and I'm just now going through that process now. But I know there's got to be a lot of people out there like me that are just so like, I don't deserve it. Like I didn't do enough to deserve it. But yeah, we all do.
There's such a stigma around the some people call them pogs, whatever you want to call it, that not being a grunt, not being an infantryman, not being this, not being that. The stigma is created, unfortunately, by us. Yeah, and then 100%. We let it manifest into this much bigger thing. And, I was a 88 hotel, which is a 6'3" hotel with 88 qualifiers. So I ran with tankers. I drove an 88. My job was to go and recover blown up tanks, blown up, Bradleys, M1s, Paladins, whatever. So we saw way more than I ever wanted to see. Mm-hmm. But I know I have friends that all they ever did was convoys, or all they ever did was gate guard. And they're struggling more than some of the people that I know that were in this shit every day, because at least, in talking to a buddy of mine that's an infantryman, he's a big YouTube guy, and talking to him about it, he's like, dude, I got to get my anger out. I got to kick in doors. I got to blow shit up and get some of that anger and frustration out, where a lot of these guys, they didn't get to do that. They saw the bombs coming in. They couldn't do anything about it. Mortar attacks, rocket attacks. Bo Boyer is a very good friend of mine that was attached to headquarters that was killed by a mortar attack. He never went outside the wire. But people like that, like, a guy named Sanchez was right next to him. Didn't get hurt, but he was right next to him. Saw him die. Never went outside the wire. That guy's living with that guilt, and he is struggling right now because he can't process it. It's been 20 years. 20 years, and you still can't process it.
And if you think about it, so look at everything as a whole. So the military as what it is, all of these first responder communities, the professions, just the culture within that profession. Then you look at society as a whole. June is Mental Health Month for men. There's a reason why that is, right? There's a reason why we actually have something to say, hey, let's take a pause and let's talk to men to see how they're doing. There's a reason why that is. They wouldn't put an awareness for us if there wasn't a reason why they're actually doing that, right? There wasn't a problem. The biggest problem is that we are always told to shut up and continue to push forward, not talk to you about your emotions, not all that. And then we go into these professions that echo that, and then it's part of the culture as well. And now it's like, okay, society is telling me to shut up and continue to push forward. The people that I bled with are telling me the same thing. So what do? You just shut up and continue to push forward. And what does that do? I always tell these two individuals all the time, live your life when you enjoy it, not live your life where you're just barely making it. What kind of life is that? When you're just barely getting by? Oh, I'll go get a 6-pack. I will get a 12-pack so that I can have some type of normalcy in my life, and I won't speak up and talk about the shit that is really going in my head. Many years of my life, and I think about this a lot because my oldest and my middle one endured a lot because of me, and that to me is what kills me. Is when I see them when they themselves act out on their anxiety, act out on their depression and stuff like that. And I understand they're mirroring their daddy. They're mirroring me. They're not mirroring somebody else. It's learned behavior. They learned it from me. So if you look at it, if I look at what I wish I would have had this knowledge back then so that I could provide a better view. I could provide a better role model to my family. I could be a better dad to my kids. And that's what kills me, is that we live our lives in this notion of just barely making it. And we let our lives pass by. And then we look back to it and we're like, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have spoken up about the shit that was going on with me. There's still fucking time. You still got breath in your lungs. You can do it right now. You can raise your hand and say, let's get this fucking shit started. Let me drop my pack and release all this crap that I have hidden away for so many years. Let's unpack it. Let's bring it back out and let's talk about it, because that's the only way you're going to get past that.
So coming out of high school and all that, what led you to the Marine Corps?
Man, that well, I can tell you one thing, brother. Like, I was a piece of shit, man. I was a piece of shit. I remember one of the biggest things that I've had. I had a shitty childhood as well, which a lot of us that are in the military, that have gone in the military, you know, are always seeking for something more, seeking for that family and stuff like that. I had a shitty childhood, and I had a family member that would always tell me that I wasn't going to amount to anything, that I was, you know, a piece of shit, that I was an idiot, all these things that, you know, that could be said negatively. And one day I was working out in the fields, and I was with my brother, and I'm like looking at my life, and I'm like, everything this individual said, I am living up to it. Everything he said, I am living up to it. Right. 2 weeks before that, I was watching. It was September 11th happened right before when I was in high school. It was my senior year. Had seen the towers fall, all of that. That didn't impact me, but at the same time too, I was a selfish son of a bitch, man. Like, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, so I was always just kind of thinking about myself. And then this stuff happened. I started looking at my life and everything like that. I'm like, what am I doing here? Right? Like, I wanted something bigger than myself. I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. And I remember the way that I was living my life was not what I wanted. Right. And I wanted something different of my life instead of what my family had. Like, everybody was kind of the same way. It was do the bare minimum, you know, have enough money, all of that. And I didn't want to live that life. I didn't want to go there. So I was like, you know what? I knew that we were going to Iraq. I knew we were going to go to war. And I was like, if I need to transform myself, I am going to remove myself and put myself in a situation where I know I'm going to have to change, right? I'm going to have to sink or swim. So I remember I told my brother at that time, I was like, hey, look, you get my money from whatever we're working here and let's just leave. I went back. I had one of my friends that was joining the Marine Corps. He had told me, and I told him, I was like, you know what? Give me the recruiter's phone number. I'm going to call him up. So I called him up and got in the Marine Corps with him. But to me, the reason was I wanted to be I wanted something bigger than myself. I wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than me. I wanted to know that I've done something, right? Fight for my country, you know, be a part of something that is going to change, right? And, you know, we kind of look at now of what had happened in Iraq, and we look at what happened in Afghanistan, the reasonings for there and everything like that. As much as there's so much negativity and there's so much, maybe we shouldn't have been there, maybe we should have, whatever. We didn't think about that at the time. The thing we thought about, it was our brothers left to right of us. That's the only thing we thought about, right? That's why when we talk about brotherhood and we talk about like family and everything like that, it's like people don't understand that concept of your brother and what, you know, even though you don't have the same blood running through your veins, you would die for that individual. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted that experience, and I'm glad I went through it. Like, I've had people ask me, like, you know, now with everything you've gone through in your life, would you tell your family to get into the military? I'm like, fuck yeah, I would. Absolutely. Hell yeah, I would, because you learn so much about yourself. Yeah, there's other things that are attached to it, but I think once we start breaking these barriers and we start changing the community, the way they think about mental health, asking for help, all of that stuff, then maybe it would be for the better, right? And all of the experiences, everything you learn, all the different, the pride, brother. I tell this to everybody. Every time I see the American flag, I hear taps, I hear the national anthem. Man, my goosebumps. Because I know what that means, right? I know how many people have bled and died for that flag. And that's the most, as much as it's the most saddest thing, that's the most beautiful thing, because we have sacrificed so much for the betterment of our country, for everybody else, right? And to sacrifice for the person that you don't know anything about, right? Yeah, you might, your brothers and sisters as well, but like for the bigger, the greater good, right? Like you're fighting and you're dying for the greater good of our country. Nothing more beautiful than that.
Yeah, I think on the civilian side, so many people watch these movies that dramatize the military, and they don't quite understand the dynamic. I mean, you look at, it's not just about, yes, we're fighting next to each other and we're watching each other die or get wounded, whatever. No, like we're sleeping together, we're shitting next to each other, like we're doing shit together that like you're over here like civilians, you wouldn't do this stuff. Like, like there's a relationship there that's like it's just so much deeper than blood to me. Like I have brothers and sisters and I'm very close to them and I love them to death, but like there will never be a replacement for guys like Kyle Brown, Bo Boyer, Sanchez, Durham, these guys that were like, this was my family for, you can call it 3 years, and to some people that's not a long time, but you're talking about in the shit for 3 years,
24 hours a day,
24 hours a day. Like that is family. And you just, there's that bond that, you know, we disconnected, me and some of the guys like Kyle, we disconnected years ago because, you know, family's life.
Yeah.
He lives in Ohio. I live in Texas. We reconnected recently because he was buying a house. He wanted to set some advice, and it was like nothing ever happened.
Yep.
Like it just,
Always.
I go see my brothers after 2 weeks. I'm just like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like,
No,
it's just, it's natural.
I completely agree with you on that. It's crazy how like sometimes you can stop talking for like 3 years, whatever like that, and then you start talking and it feels like you've never stopped.
Yeah.
Right. It feels like the conversation never stopped. And I had a friend of mine that had when I was in the Marine Corps. His name is Vic. Man, we talked about the most personal, like every little thing. Like there was nothing to hide, right? Like, I mean, we were on these convoys and we were on at Iraq, whatever like that. And we had all of these conversations, the most deepest conversations that you will ever have with an individual. And I know everything about him. I know what he was scared of, what everything, all of his fears. And I think that is what individuals don't understand about the military. What you don't understand about family within the military is that you develop this bond that you can't change. And that's why a lot of people, when you talk about transitioning out of the military, it's very difficult to get that, right?
You don't even realize you're establishing this bond. Like you don't even realize what's going on in that moment. You're just kind of like, like this is normal, right? Because that's your normalcy now. And then, like you said, you transition out and you're like, shit, well, where are you going? Well, I'm going here. Well, what do we do next? Yeah. And there's nobody there to help you with that next step. And that leads me to, you know, Frontline Strong and some of the biggest challenges that you see on the people that engage with Frontline Strong. What are you seeing those challenges look like? What do those challenges look like to you from the people coming into it?
So it's exactly what I'm saying is the barriers. And so like we had one individual reached out to us a couple of weeks ago. First conversation I had with him, I was like, hey, I think you need a little bit more help than just therapy, right? And so we started talking, and one of the biggest things, he had been in San Antonio for a minute. He had been here for a while and hadn't developed any friendships. And one of the biggest things is that's what I was trying to say, is that it's very difficult to leave the military and develop the same relationships when you get out of the military. It's very hard. Yeah. And you're thinking, hey, like friendships, family, all of this like that. Once I get out, I'm going to be able to create that as well. It does not happen. So a lot of these individuals, they struggle and they don't reach out and get those friendships because it's very hard for them. And a lot of the times these individuals try to go get help with VA. Same thing. Hey, we're not going to get you into therapy for another like 6-7 months or whatever like that. And it's just like, if you don't have something pushing you to go get that help, you're just going to shut the door and say, hey, well, I tried, right? I try to go get that help. So a lot of these guys, they come to us and they're like, well, when do you think I can get into therapy? I can get you in by the end of the week. Like I had one guy send me a request yesterday. He's already going to be in therapy on Monday. Whoa. So the thing about it is when you remove these barriers, there's a lot of guys that want to get help. So many guys that want to get help, but they see the system for how broken it is and they lose interest or it's like, well, the system is already going to, it's broken. And it's basically, I'm going to say, I need help. And they're going to tell me, hey, I can't get you help for another 6 or 7 months. So why even do it? Like, why even start? So to me, it's like whenever they need the help, we should be able to provide it for them. They sacrifice so much that once they ask for help, you're making them jump through hoops to be able to get that help. Does that make any sense?
It's insane. When I went to get my counseling, I started counseling in 2012-ish, and I didn't go to the VA. I just paid out of pocket. Like fortunately, I had started a really good job, and I was in a position where I could afford to do it. It was $100 a session, and I was going twice a week. It was because, like you said, there's so much red tape. And, I went through this problem I've got so many injuries from the military that getting treatment from the VA is next to impossible. So I pay for private healthcare so I can get those treatments. Yeah. And I remember when the choice program came into place in 2016, I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, because I thought this was legitimate. Like, this is going to help so much. And I was battling a shoulder injury that I've been battling for about 10 years or 8 years or so. And it got worse over the 3 years prior. And I walked in, I called the VA. They couldn't get me in for like 90 days. And the choice program says if it's more than 60 days, you can pick your own private civilian doctor and go, and they'll pay for it. I picked a guy, Siraj Saeed, right down the road here. I walked in his office. I was in his office for 5 minutes, and he told me I had a torn labrum it was a slap tear from 6 to 12. I walked downstairs, dye injection, MRI, done, back to his office. I was on the operating table 3 days later.
There you go.
And I'm like, it's not that goddamn hard, but the bureaucrats in the system, and this is, I don't give a shit where you fall politically. They're both guilty of it. Yeah. It's a bureaucratic system, and this is who we running our healthcare.
Yep.
On the private sector side. So you mentioned a program called Wellness Empowered, which is an app that you're working on. Tell us about this app and what you expect it to bring to the table.
So when we started Frontline Strong, one of the biggest things, and I know I mentioned to you when I came, one of the things that we saw a lot was one of the police departments in the area was having a high suicide rate. They had 8 suicides within 18 months. And one of the biggest things that we saw out of that is that a lot of the family members that I was talking to, that we were providing them help with, were just like, I wish there was more for this, right? I wish there was more that could be done. And I think, to me, because of my suicide attempt, suicide has always been something that is kind of like, I need to find a solution for this, because there's so many individuals that lose their lives to a lie. And what I mean is to a lie is to this concept of like, this is the only way to be better, right? Is to take your life. So I was like, what can I do different, right? So I started doing a little bit of research on, what is a proactive approach to suicide, right? Proactive approach to suicide prevention. And everything we saw was all reactive in nature. It's all providing you a phone number. It's all providing you all these resources with nothing.
It's like do it yourself.
Yeah. With nothing that has something that's going to push them to do the right thing. Right. So I was like, what else can we do? So I started mapping out this concept of proactive approach to suicide prevention. I approached my really, really good friend of mine who helped me found Frontline Strong. And I pitched it to him. I was like, what do you think about this? Right. And then he was like, this is a great idea. He's like, well, instead of doing it, because at first time I was thinking about like a wearable device. He's like, instead of a wearable device, why don't we do it into an app? So that concept became into what we are now, which is a proactive approach. And I don't want to say too much to suicide prevention, but it's a proactive approach to mental health. So basically, all our information that we have in our wearable devices will be extracted by our platform and will be directed towards a therapist. If you have a therapist on the application, will be directed towards your therapist, and also will be directed to peer support. So what we have provided is a proactive approach to mental health. But also it's about giving more data to these individuals to better treat you. It's looking at your biometrics, such as your sleep, your step count, your mood. So within the platform, we're able to check off how you're feeling today. It asks you 3 times a day, how are you feeling today? Basically, you have a little feeling wheel thing where it has three positive emotions, 3 negative emotions. You have an intensity level for those emotions. Each each of those are directly connected to an algorithm that we have associated. So we have an algorithm for a high risk patient, and we have an algorithm for just a regular patient, whatever like that. And the way that is, if you start going away from your norms, the system will pick that up. If you go deviate away from your norms, it will pick it up and it would actually send you a notification. Are you in crisis? But also at the same time, it will send a notification to your peer support so that they can reach out to you. So going back to what I was talking to you about my suicide attempt, one of the things that stopped me from committing suicide was a picture of my daughter. So right when I was about to commit suicide, my wife sent me a picture of my daughter, and that stopped me. It made me realize that, hey, you need to live. If it's not for you, you need to live for your family. You need to live for that little girl, because if you go ahead and do this, you're really putting her life at a very not a stop point, but you're making it extremely more difficult for her, right? They're going to live their lives wondering, like, why did daddy leave? Is it something I did? Or my wife didn't know anything about that as well, right? So it's like all of these things are things that prevented me from doing it. So I took that same concept of having that photo as having a check-in, having these individuals get somebody calling them, instead of the whole concept of 988 where you have to reach somebody. You have to be able to like make a judgment call when you're about to commit suicide, when you're at that point, at your lowest point, when you only think that death is the only solution, to make a judgment call like, yeah, I think I need to call somebody here. I think I'm about to commit suicide. No. So what I decided to do is have the system call you. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have the algorithm associated to it.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
There's a lot more to it.
There's a lot more too, but that's like, I just go back and I think about when Jack died, like, and this is probably one of my best friends ever. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I know the conversation he had before he did it, and it was not a good conversation. And it was what triggered this. If only something like that would have been around, where he would have picked up where somebody would have called him, me, Derek, or, our friends, could have stopped all of it. Because I think people don't understand how quick suicide happens. Mm. For the most part, in my experience and what I know about it, and everybody's situation is different, but for the most part, suicide it's thought of and done. It's not something that you plan over the course of 3 or 4 days. This is something that's pretty much like, I've made up my mind, I'm just going to do this.
Instant.
And so you don't have much time to react or to counter. Suicide prevention hotlines are amazing. I'm not ever going to take away from that. And it's such a good program to have. And I know it's helped several of my friends, but understanding what triggers suicide, understanding what triggers, whether it's veterans or first responders, whatever, that's how you're going to prevent it better. And the mental health side of it, a lot of people talk about mental health. Oh, just, whatever. Fine. You can think that all you want, but at the end of the day, if your mental health isn't strong, your relationship with your family isn't strong. Your relationship with your friends aren't strong. Your relationship with yourself isn't strong. So I think it's important to have something that can potentially be life-changing to start the process of, hey, your numbers are a little low today. You good? You good? Because that conversation leads to, shit, man, this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And there's so much you said there, man. And I think one of the reasons why when we created this, a lot of individuals, they just want to hear from somebody, right? Yep. And a lot of the times it's like, nobody gives a fuck, right? That's what you tell yourself. So there's one thing that I do have to kind of like go back on what you're saying is that, yeah, it's not something that you kind of plan it out for the last 3 or 4 days, but it's something that builds.
100%,
so if it's like 3, 4, 2 weeks, whatever like that, one of the things with myself is that I wasn't sleeping. Through all of that, I was sleeping 4 hours, I was sleeping 3 hours and stuff like that. And so when you start seeing those kind of trends and you start seeing that, and you could just have somebody reach out to you, hey, are you doing okay? Now, those voices in your head that say, nobody gives a crap about what I'm going through. Now it's like, hey, this person reached out to me and made contact just to see how I am doing. And I'm able to communicate, have a conversation with them for 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever you need to be able to make you feel better. But at least you have an understanding that somebody cares enough to reach out to you. So this whole voice that you have in your head that says, nobody really cares what you're going through. Nobody cares what you're feeling. you can actually silence that voice and be like, somebody gives a fuck about me. I actually have a person. So one of the things that we have on there is there's an SOS button. This whole concept of 988, and they start changing the numbers around to make it easier and all that. This thing, all you got to click is an SOS button in the middle, and then you're in direct contact with somebody right there and then. And one of the things that I also attached to it, and one of the reasons why that is we had an incident with a police officer that they couldn't find him while he was about to commit suicide. I added on the SOS button. So whenever you click that, it's a geolocation to wherever you're at. So if you decide at that point that you want to commit suicide, we at least know where you're at. And we have the emergency contact that we can be able to contact your family. We can be able to contact emergency personnel within your area to reach out to you and get to you. The thing about it, man, is that we look at the system the way it is. I'm a person that looks at the system and how broken it is. And I do not want to sit and just have somebody else fix the shit, right? I am a person that sees how broken it is. How can we do to fix it? Mm-hmm. What do I have no background in mental health. What I am a patient. Mm-hmm. I am somebody who is still, at this point, still sitting in darkness. There's more light within my darkness now, right? But I am still sitting there, and I understand how these individuals feel every single days of their lives. So what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Just sit here and understand that other individuals are feeling the same way, or try to solve the problem, or at least put more light into it? I'm not saying that my plan and my vision for this is going to be successful, but I am praying to God it is, because we need more. And the way that I view this right now is, this could be for first responders and veterans right now, but my direction, what I want this is for everybody.
I mean, you saved one life.
Oh man,
it's successful, brother.
One of my really good friends told me this, like, what keeps you going? Mm-hmm. When I started all of this, I started with poetry, right? And I write poetry, which is a lot of people, they get a kick out of that. A Marine writing poetry. I always get the questions of, do you use crayons to write your shit and all that? And which is your favorite color? All that. But I get those questions all the time. But through that, man, it helped me be vulnerable with individuals, and it helped me be how do I say this? Like, it helped me give voices to other individuals that are trying to figure out how to say these things, but they just don't know how to say it, right? And once they hear these things, they're able to, like, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
So I had several people within, like, TikTok, within, like, Facebook and stuff like that, and people that have seen my poetry that saved their lives.
Wow.
And then to me, it's like, that is, if I can at least give somebody some clarity that this darkness, this pain that they're going through is not their end, all of these things, then it gives me more of an understanding of that what I am doing is important. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
What can we expect from Frontline Strong in the future? Because it's not just, I mean, you have a podcast.
Yeah.
Like, tell us about your podcast, because I've watched some of your stuff and it's pretty strong, like, good in a good way.
Yeah.
So tell us about your podcast.
So the podcast really is, that's how we started everything. Mm-hmm. Initially, when we started our nonprofit, we started off as a podcast, and we were bringing in first responders and veterans and all of this stuff, whatever like that. And we were talking about mental health. And like I just told you right now, like, everything that they said was the same thing over and over and over again. More needs to be done, all of this stuff, whatever like that. And that's when I kind of stopped the whole podcast thing and decided to, like, put all of my effort into this nonprofit and providing the help that these individuals need. It's one thing about talking about it, and there's no action behind your talk, then it's just talk, right? Yeah. So I wanted to put the action behind it. So I knew there was a problem. Let's find a way to solve that issue, right? The more and more that I've done it, it's mostly just like motivational talks that I've done on there. Also, I started with my wife. We started doing, and that's one of the hardest things that I had to do, was have her hear her basically say, like, what I have done, and I take full responsibility, right? Like, one of the podcasts that we did, I told her, I was like, I understand when I'm good. And when I'm bad, I am a dark cloud. And I know what I can do to our family, right? So hearing it sometimes, it's one thing about saying it, but hearing it and understanding that you've made such an impact to your family in the negative way, it really kills me. And but at the same time, I forgive myself because I'm not that person anymore, right? I'm not that individual anymore. So that's where we're at on the podcast. I would still, there is a portion of the application of the app where it's called Be Inspired, and I want to build that out. So what I want to put in that section of the podcast is that section of the app is I want to put motivational content. I want to put podcasts. I want to put basically educational videos and stuff like that. But I want to get a wide variety of voices within that section to be able to appeal to the crowd that we're trying to serve, right? So like first responders, veterans, and stuff like that. So that's one thing we're still trying to build out. But I love talking about this, man, because I think one of the things that I've told a lot of individuals is I'm tired of hiding this shit. Like I'm tired of wearing that mask and saying everything is okay. Like shit is not okay. You know, there's things out there that are deeply impacting our community, and it needs to be said. It needs to be put out in the open, and people need to talk about it. Not just about, you know, your best times that you were in the military or all of that, but all of the other shit all of the other shit that comes to it that you can't see, that is hidden within your head. We need to bring that out and talk about it.
I think that's what I love about the veterans. So I've never been big into the social media space. I've always just stuck to my business, and my business is real estate, and, you know, done well, whatever, you know, but here recently I've got a friend of mine. He, and I won't say names cause he probably doesn't want it out there, but anyways, he's a good buddy of mine that I actually met through real estate. He's a Navy veteran, and he's got a group of people that are veteran content creators, and they're wildly successful. Like they're massive in that space. And he's really pushed me to get more involved in it. So I've started doing some different content and different things that I'm doing. Like I'm fixing to release a YouTube video about a lieutenant that was injured in Iraq when we were convoying from BIOP to Green Zone, and she's now an Olympic bronze medalist, and she's going to Paris. She's an NBC. Awesome. It's an amazing story. And you know, one of my squad leaders was actually the guy that responded to the IED attack that saved her life, that did the tourniquet that saved her life. And so I've started to get more into that space. And I think it's important for everybody to understand what we're talking about is the way this should have gone down 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, is that veterans should have always been empowered to take control of this situation. Because when you, and I'm not going to knock medical professionals because I love you guys, and this is not directed at first responders, but when you don't experience what we experience, how can you treat it? How can you understand how to treat it? And I think that goes into why the VA approached it with the medical side of it, and instead of the medicines and the grief counseling. We don't need grief counseling. We need people that understand what we saw, what we went through, what we're dealing with. And you're seeing so many different veteran content creators come out and discuss this on a macro level and making it more the Sean Ryans of the world, the Unsubscribed podcast, you know, the Demolition Ranch guys, the Black Rifle Coffee guys, like removing the politics side of it. They're giving veterans a platform to discuss this, to lay it on the table, put it out there so that people like you and people like me and people like Carlos can talk about this, so that somebody, anybody, I don't care if it's just one person, will stop and say, okay, I need to call somebody. Just one person, because that's all it takes. Because that one person could then become an advocate for this, to talk to the next person, to talk to the next person. And then slowly and surely, hopefully take that 22 a day and get it down to 21, get it down to 20, get it down to 19. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. 22 a day. That's how many veterans take their lives every single day. This is not a joke. It's not a game. And when veterans start taking responsibility for each other, it starts getting better. And we're seeing that more and more. I
actually
love it.
Actually, that number is actually 42 a day. There's been actually research been done that the VA was actually withholding numbers. So it's actually 42 a day. So the biggest thing of what you're talking about is that I love what you said, because I think when you empower individuals to speak up, and I think that's the reason why I love talking about, and I don't like to expose of what I went through, because everybody's fucking story is important. Exactly what we just talked about with Carlos. It's like everybody's story is important. I tell this to a couple of my buddies who have said like, oh, well, my story is not like yours. And I'm like, bro, if you think about it, if it's affecting your life, it's fucking important. If you're drinking too much, if you are removing yourself away from your family, if you're doing this and that just so that you won't live your life, it's important. So it doesn't matter what happened. It only matters that it's affecting you, and you need to figure out somehow to get past that. So I myself, like I drank a lot, man. Every single fucking day, every single day I drank. One of the biggest things that I've done in the last year and 6 months is I'm sober. And you know what that actually made me see? It made me see things clearer. It made me see things for what they truly are. We've been taught, especially Marine Corps was founded in a damn bar,
True.
And if you think about it, like if you think about it, like in the military, in all of these other first responder communities, that's the first thing they do. Had a tough day, go get a beer. Drink
beer.
Yep. So what do? You make it a part of your life, and you make it into this thing of like, if I'm feeling something, go open up a beer, go get a 12-pack, go get a 6-pack. But what does that do? It's making you numb. It's creating this other notion in your head of the only way to be able to have some normalcy in your life is being able to go get a beer.
It's doing the same thing we're complaining about the VA doing.
Yes, exactly.
That's all it is.
Exactly. So the last year and 6 months that I have been sober, I have been truly me, because before that it was just a version of denial, a version of trying to surpass by numbing, and now it's like the only way you're going to really get past this shit is to really process through the shit you went through. My shit was military, was my shitty ass childhood, was all these other things that all compounded and created this darkness that I have. And if I don't get past that darkness, there's this beauty. I don't know the actual quote, but the only way to get past the storm is to go through the fucking storm. You are not going to, if you keep running away from it, you're never going to get past it. That fucking storm is always going to catch up.
Circles.
Yes. So if you don't go past the fucking storm and go through it, that's the only way that you're going to be able to get past this. And the only way that you're going to feel that weight that you have on your chest start to fucking surpass, like start to release. That's the only way. So I love the last few years of my life because I feel like I am truly me, right? And I feel like that weight that I have had on my chest for so long is gone. And I want other people to feel that. I want other people to understand that life is, so many times, man, in my life, I always thought that life is like, fuck life, man. It just sucks. I can't wait till I die, all of these things. But life is beautiful. Through all of the darkness you went through your life, through all of the stuff that you went through, life is beautiful because, and I tell this to one of my friends that like, I love them, man. And I've told them, I was like, man, if you look back in your life, when you're in the middle of a storm, you're in the middle of darkness, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. People come and tell you, just continue to push forward, go process through the things you're going to. Eventually you will get out of this darkness, and you never see it, right? Because you're surrounded by darkness. But once you do, and you pass that storm, you look back and you look at that road that you just traveled, that journey you just went through, you appreciate life even more, because with all bad, there is good, right? And there's a beauty in working through all that and getting past it. There's so much beauty in that.
So where all can they find information about Frontline Strong and the program you're running?
So our website is frontlinestrong.org. We have on there, you'll find everything. We have our podcast on there. We have, if people want to donate, we have that on there as well. I have some YouTube videos on there with some of my poetry and stuff like that on there as well. So yeah, they can find, especially if you have veterans out there, first responders and family members that are in needing of help, we can go on there and get and seek that help.
So directly, like from your website, they can.
Yeah, and it takes about 5 minutes for them to actually fill out the application. And we're not asking for DD-214s. We're not asking for a copy of your ID, anything like that.
Did the Navy give out DD-214s?
Sorry, what's that?
So that was a pretty intense conversation. We're gonna back it up. We've had some people reach out wanting us to talk about a very interesting subject that happened last night. Not your trip to Vegas.
We
don't want to hear about that.
Late last night.
People want to talk about the debate, and I feel like it's an interesting topic. Did you watch it?
Oh yes, I did.
Okay, so I feel like it's an interesting topic because I think there's growing sentiment around what should or shouldn't happen moving forward. I want to make sure I clear the air on something real quick because all this conversation about who lied about what. So I'm just going to put two things out there first. Donald Trump lied about the choice program. I will say that because he did not institute the choice program. That was Obama era legislation that Trump ended because it cost too much, which it was expensive, I'm sure. I don't care. It worked. So just make sure you understand that. But don't forget about the 15 people that Joe Biden got killed in Afghanistan that said never died. That was also a bullshit lie. Those are the two things that I'm going to talk about. But with talking about the debate, what did you think about what went down on that stage last night?
So I don't really like to get into politics, but the only thing I really did see was just like, how could the Democrat Party put forth an individual like that? It was super sad to see, that to me is and then to lie about it throughout, the last few months, saying that, he is this really, really brilliant individual that nobody can keep up with and all of that. And it's just like, I myself, like, I am a big supporter of Donald Trump. I really love his policies. I really love what but I mean, you can love and hate him. There's a lot of stuff about him that I don't like as well, but I love the way I was paying, $1.25, $1.30 for gas. I like that, the borders were more secure. I like that, there was a lot more things in his presidency that I loved. I love that he was America first. I loved all these other things, right? That, I mean, as a veteran, you would think, you are, America first, lead by strength, all of these things. A lot of the things that I loved about him. There's a lot of things that I wish he would change. There's a lot of things that I wish he would just kind of shut up and not speak up too much and say all these other, but at the same time too, those are the reasons why a lot of people love them, because he's not political. He's not an individual that sits there and acts the same presidential. Would I want to be presidential? Yes, of course. Everybody wants a president that is presidential, but at the same time too, you kind of like the whole concept of saying how it is.
I think what draws people to him, and I've never been a fan of him, but I do fall more on the conservative side of things, obviously. But I think what people liked about him was that he didn't give a shit if he won or lost.
No.
He's like, he made it. It's done. This was just hey, let's go see if I can do it. He did it. And you can't argue. People like these things. They like paying for cheap gas. They like paying for cheap groceries. They like making a shit ton of money, and they like being able to buy a house. Those are the things that people like. If you can't do that, people aren't going to like you.
Yeah.
I went into that debate last night thinking, okay, there's two ways this is going to go. Either Trump's going to go in there, guns blazing, and just look like a complete idiot, and Biden's just going to be quiet, calm, and collected, and probably win that debate, or it's going to be an absolute disaster. It was way worse than an absolute disaster. I felt so bad for Joe Biden on that stage because I was just like, this is not right. This is borderline abusive. And I think it was done on purpose.
Elderly abuse?
Yeah. I mean, you walked, this guy had 5 days at Camp David to prepare for this. And he wasn't prepared. One of the CNN announcers watching the CNN coverage, they gave him the questions. He knew what questions were coming and he couldn't answer it. Why would you even put him on that stage? Like, and then you go into like the downside, I think, from the Donald Trump perspective was you kept going back to him. You shut him up the first 5 minutes. You won. Now go into your policy. Go into how are you going to reduce childcare costs? How are you going to bring down inflation? How are you going to improve, veteran healthcare? How are you going to improve or remove ACA? How are you that's what you do that, and this is over.
Well, and as much as I don't like getting into politics, but what you're saying though, if you look at the issues that we're facing right now, they're not because of Donald Trump.
No,
they're all because of him. Yeah. So if he is saying, hey, I'm going to solve this, I am going to solve that, then why don't you just do it now? Like,
that was the one thing I was talking to a buddy I was watching it with last night, and I kept saying, I was like, you're going to do all these things. You've had 3.5 years to do it. Like, why haven't you just done it then? Like, going back to inflation, we had almost net zero inflation going into his presidency. It wasn't because of COVID, because look, we're in the real estate business.
Yep.
Business was booming during COVID. Business was booming, and it wasn't just real estate. As soon as they lifted restrictions, the stay-at-home orders, business was booming because people were making money. It didn't cost you shit to do anything. Business was booming. Influx in pools, influx in outdoor kitchens, influx in commercial space. Like, business was booming. 18 months into the Joe Biden presidency is when inflation skyrocketed. 12 to 18 months.
Well, let me tell you this. We have, in the last, 6 months, I think, me and the wife have talked about getting a new house. Mm-hmm. Hell no, would I get a new house right now? No. Just the interest rates alone. Like, I have a really, really low interest rate. Thank you, Kendall. And I wouldn't.
Don't. Do not bring her. No.
So I would not get a house right now. I would not. And when my daughters, they were like, well, Daddy, are we going to get in a house? And I was like, well, if President Trump gets back in office, and maybe I'll get another house. But I would not get a new house right now with the way that everything is right now.
It sounds like Kendall needs to work on her scripts. If you want to take a coaching class with me, I can teach you. No, and look, I'm not the pressure type anyways. I don't blame you. Like, my wife has mentioned building a new house also. And it's like, we go back and look at what it would cost us to rebuild what we have. And it would cost us twice as much, almost to the penny, twice as much to rebuild what we have. And that's without the land.
Yeah.
And it's like, so yeah, I mean, everybody, like I said, they want the cheap things and they want to make as much money as they can. And it costs us super cheap to live. And it goes down to, like, you talk about energy independence and things like that. And I never understand why that's not such a bigger topic, because you go to, I live in South Texas, like south, like an hour south of here. And that's oil field country.
Yep.
And it always drives me crazy when you hear people talk about not wanting to be energy independent. And I'm like, we're sitting on the largest oil reserves in the world.
Yep.
Not only could we produce more than any other country in the world if we wanted to, we would produce it a lot cleaner. We know we're going to use it.
Yep.
We know we're going to use it, right? We're buying it from all over the world, from countries that are not producing it in a clean and efficient way. Whatever you want to say about climate change, if you believe in that, hey, what better way to reduce your carbon footprint than to let the country that is the most regulated oil and gas industry produce all your oil and gas? Like, that's how you slow down inflation. That's how you create and generate wealth for our country to reduce the national debt. That's how you stop printing money. Like, I don't know. This seems like very simple, complicated things, uncomplicated things.
The biggest thing that was on my mind from the debate is, which is very true, is the border. Like, how they really do take more care of these illegal immigrants than they do veterans.
Yeah.
100%. And that bothers me every day, especially when you see all these immigrants in hotels, giving money cards, all this stuff, and you have veterans out on the street. They can't even have places.
And if you look at it, like, what they're actually doing, right? What these illegal immigrants are doing and killing these individuals and stuff like that, killing that 12-year-old in Houston and stuff like that. And it's just like, I think when you look at it as a whole, right now, our country, and one of the biggest things that he said is it is in decline. I mean, if you can't see that, like, are you blind?
Yeah.
You look at everything from inflation to the border, to how we are, abroad, to how we're not showing strength, and all of these things, how many wars are out there, all of that. You can't be blind to see it. You can't.
So it's funny that you bring that up, because I actually went over some stats in this video that I'm getting edited right now. So nearly 1/3 of all United States veterans have some form of disability, whether it's, PTSD, hearing loss, whatever, some sort of simple disability.
ED.
I'm talking, ED is not one of those. I'm talking straight. I mean, I guess it could be. I guess I'm talking straight combat related documented disability. That's over 3.5 million veterans. Okay. There's almost 40,000 homeless veterans. 40,000 homeless veterans. It would cost $52 billion to remove every homeless veteran from the street, give them housing for the rest of their lives, as well as mental health services. Do you know how much the last package to Ukraine was?
I was barely going to tell you that.
Yeah.
I was just barely going to say
We'll
that.
leave it at that. There's roughly 242,000, almost 250,000 veterans that are unemployed right now, today.
Absolutely insane.
60% of them are in our age group. 60% of the veterans that we served with, 60% of the veterans that we served with are unemployed. The most able-bodied workforce in the country is unemployed. Yet there's 18 million illegals coming across the border this year?
Supposedly. That's what they said.
What they say, whether that's true or not, but
See what happens when Trump gets elected.
Well, I at the same time too, is like when we talk about, where our community is at, how we look at everything. So I'm 100% totally and permanent, right? Disabled. So I don't have to pay taxes for the home. And that's another thing where, as much as I'm like looking at other houses and stuff like that, even with that, I'm still not wanting to go get a house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, and then before, like I would have, I would have gone and go get another house because like the inflation wasn't where it was at and everything like that. When you start taking and you start scaring individuals on making purchases like that and or doing other things or going on vacations or all of these kind of things where like that, I think one of the things they talked about yesterday about the middle class, and there's actually some people that are saying that where is the middle class nowadays here in the United States? That is scary when you have poor and you have rich and there's nobody in the middle. When you start disappearing the middle class, that's when you have that's when you have a different type of country.
You have a much bigger problem when you start doing that. And I think the hard part is trying to establish what is the middle class, because most people would say someone that makes six figures is not middle class. Okay, well, middle class to me, as I remember it growing up, was you made $50,000, $60,000 a year, combined income, $100,000, $120,000 between two parents, single household. Well, you can't live off that now.
Not anymore.
You can't. I think I go back and I look at what I do, and between the gym and the real estate business, and I'm like, okay, we're very, 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 very blessed. And I go back and I think, how the hell did I ever live 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Because I have less money now and I make more money than I had back then. I'm much more conscientious about what I buy. Granted, we do go on trips and I enjoy my life because I am not going to be a prison to working hard. I'm not going to be a slave to my labor. But it's damn, I'm much more conscientious about what I spend my money on, because it's we did a DoorDash the other day. Yes, we have DoorDash in Lavernia. I did a DoorDash the other day, and then we did Whataburger. Okay, and I got two number ones, plain and dry with fries, and then I got a grilled chicken sandwich. It was $60.
Yep, I was really gonna say that.
I was like, bro, what?
Burger?
I remember when I was working for a company called Iron Horse RV when I was 22 years old, fresh out of or 23 or 24, fresh out of DOD contracting. And I could go to McDonald's or Sonic, and for $1, I could get a cheeseburger, a fries, and a small drink.
There's no dollar menu anymore.
No, I'm like, bro, these kids don't understand. If my parents spent $60 on our whole family at Applebee's, we were not getting dessert.
Yep.
I couldn't.
It has dramatically changed, man, to the point to where it's like you eating at Whataburger or McDonald's or anything like that is like luxury now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like
you go to these restaurants, go to Applebee's or wherever, it's like, damn, it's almost as much as eating a Whataburger. I got a buddy of mine that's opening a barbecue joint in Lavernia, and everybody says he's expensive. But I'm like, y'all don't understand expensive.
Right.
You go to these other barbecue restaurants where it's $33 for a 2-meat plate, and he's like $23. You think that's expensive? Get your ass out of Lavernia.
I just went to Black's in New Braunfels last weekend. Yeah, it was okay. We won't say their name. No, we already said their name. Anyway, yeah, we got have you ever had their monster rib?
Yeah, it's a dino rib.
Yeah, so we got the
monster. It's a dino rib. It's a beef rib.
Monster rib and a pound of brisket.
Jesus
for
Christ.
$100. Not just for me.
Holy shit, that's
that.
That's a lot of money for a. First of all, that dino rib is about $30 at HEB. You can buy them. No, I did dino ribs for Mother's Day. They're super good. It's just expensive. It's so bad. But that's what people are so up in arms about. So people can argue about, you want to argue about immigration. Yeah. Hey, I've got a deer lease in Brackettville. I had 4 or 5 illegals walk right across my Sendero, my daughter in my blind with me with a rifle. And yeah, you want to talk about getting a little nervous, especially me. Like, yeah, it's get in the truck and we're going back to camp. Like, so yeah, I mean, that's a big problem. And then you talk about what people are spending, talk about the housing. I mean, I look at some of these mortgage payments that some of these people are paying, and I'm just like, I would shit myself if I paid that much. And I don't pay. And I've gotten help from people in my own community about not paying property taxes. It's like, well, that's the least they could do because I damn sure can't get treatment for anything.
Right.
But it's wild, man. Like, and that's what I think is driving this push away from that party, and in a way, obviously, dementia is too. But
well, if you think about it, it's like it's like they're not looking at reality, right?
No.
Like they're looking at this other concept, whatever, like that, and it's just like, okay, are you actually even listening to the moms and dads who are going to the grocery stores and barely affording it?
And if you're digging into the weeds of it, it's like, we live in the single greatest democracy in the world. And I know that there's people out there protesting right now saying this country sucks. Trust me, you have no flipping idea what you're talking about. I have seen the worst this world has to offer. I've seen some of the most beautiful countries in the world, traveled almost everywhere. This is still the best place to live.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's still the only place you can go do the dumb shit you're doing right now and get away with it. Like, this is, and these are the two guys that we can put on the table. This is the best we can do. It's like, could you imagine being like, I don't know, the president of Russia or the freaking king of Saudi Arabia, and you're watching that debate and you're just like,
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un over there sitting there eating egg rolls. It's like, this is it. This is this is it. All right, here we go. Like,
that's why, I mean, again, I love Trump. I know you don't really, I know you're on his side, but you don't like Trump because, I mean, I personally like,
I just don't think he knows to shut the hell up.
But some people need to hear it. Even if they don't like it, they need to hear it.
I think it's that content deriving world. They need content.
Well, no, I mean, they just need to be told straight, like, all right, stop being a bitch and just fucking do it. Like,
This podcast is totally shifting gears from the last episode.
But I personally like that. I'd like rip the Band-Aid off. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. Fuck your emotions. Like, I love that. And that's why I personally like him. Also, I like his policies and stuff like that. I did not like how they were just talking back and forth at each other.
Yeah.
I thought it was
like competition.
I thought it was hilarious when they were talking about their golf swing.
Oh my god! So you know what though? I will.
Handicap or whatever.
Yeah, the first one I thought it was 6, then it was 8. It's
Yeah,
like,
it was
okay,
8. I was like,
hold on, what are we doing
just
here?
forget right now.
I will say though, I do like the format, killing the microphone. Like,
Yeah. So they
like
can't
I
look
thought
at each other.
CNN did a good job moderating that debate. For real, like I mean, there was one time in the very beginning where they kind of saved Joe Biden, but for the most part, they let them go back and forth. They gave them their times, and they killed the mic. And I think that's how every debate needs to be, because the talking over, I think it becomes intrusive onto the idea of democracy and the politics side of it. And I don't want to be an ideologue, but like, keep some order, keep a baseline approach to it. That way you keep it moving and you keep going on to the next topic. They want to keep jumping back and skipping questions like they did yesterday. Okay, fine. Let them fire dingers, but when it's time to stop.
I think at the end, man, like I said, I think if you put somebody in there that is going to be about the good of the United States and it's looking for the good of the United States, then I don't care who the hell it is. I don't care if it's a Republican, a Democrat, a independent, whatever like that. I just want somebody who's going to look at what America needs and do everything to benefit America, not benefit everybody else. And like I said, like, I'm a supporter of Trump, but if he wasn't in there, but say we had what's his name? DeSantis or Kennedy, what that Kennedy guy, whatever like that. Was it Robert Kennedy? I don't know. But anybody that is just going to do more for America, for our veterans, for our militaries, for just to get us into a position where groceries are cheaper. Mm-hmm. Like, I am for it. I don't care who that person is. I just want somebody who's going to make us better.
Yeah. That's where I think people get lost in the politics side of it. I remember growing up, my parents, I don't even know what my parents were. I think I might know, but I remember asking them, I don't remember which presidency it was, but maybe it was Clinton. And I remember saying, who'd you vote for? it was none of your damn business. Like it wasn't like you didn't know. And that was, I feel like I would have liked that better because I feel like people get so enamored in the name Democrat, Republican. I don't think people really understand. Like for the most part, I think the general public doesn't give a shit if you're a Republican or Democrat.
No.
They just want to know what is important to you. Is this country important to you? Is our flag important to you? Is our rights important to you? Is making sure that we don't have to spend a ton of money important to you? Is making sure that we can make a lot of money? Is that what's important to you? Like that, I think is what's important to every American, regardless of political line. And I think that's why I fall so hard in the center is that I don't give a shit. Don't put your politics on me and I'm not going to put mine on you. But at the end of the day, you step on my toes, I'm going to burn your house to the ground because my family and my country come first.
Well, if you think about it, what they're doing is they're watering down the American dream.
100%.
What is the American dream, right? To have money, to not necessarily all about money, but have freedom, have the ability to have a good life, be protected, all of that. Like that's part of the American dream. And when you start watering down that, then it's just like, who are we then, right? Like who are we if we can't provide the American dreams to our members of our community, right?
There's a reason why so many people want to come here. Why take that away? Like we can control that influx if you let us be who we are. And I think it goes back to like getting into the political side of it. I think so many politicians now, the word politician is a bad word. It's just not, those aren't good people, but now they just want to be celebrities. They want to be viral. They want to be stars. And they don't care if what they say hurts somebody because that's popular to their base. And that's what gets them clicks. It gets them engagement. We've talked about this on our first episode. Sports media has blossomed into the national media perspective. And it started with guys like Skip Bayless. And now you have legitimate political commentators, news analysts, anchors that are doing the exact same. They say the most outlandish shit just because that's what's going to get the reaction. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to get the engagement. They don't care if it's right or if it's wrong. Just like on stage last night when both the candidates lied about military service members and what they did for them or didn't do for them. It's just, what can I say that's going to make everybody watch me? Like the Tua girl. Like it's just engagement. Like
well, if you think about it, everybody now, and that's why I don't watch ESPN anymore, man. It gets political, and I'm like, bro, just tell me about the sports.
About race,
just talk to me about sports. Like, why do you need to start throwing all this other stuff in my face about race, about politics, but all of gender, all of this? Just talk to me about who won the game.
Yeah.
That's it.
Literally our escape from everyday society, and here I am stressing out over it. Because you're talking about it in sports.
Yeah.
That's Clark. It's all over. All I ever see now.
Still don't watch TV.
Yeah,
I don't either.
Who does? Who does? Who does? I just think that is just in many ways, it's just they've politicized everything. Yeah. From the American flag to sports, to girls playing sports, to guys playing sports, playing the girls sports as well. Like, they've politicized everything to the point where they've taken away the love and the heart away from everything. I loved football, man. And at one point I liked basketball. I don't even watch basketball anymore at all. Like there was the finals and I was like, what? The finals are going on? I used to love watch the San Antonio Spurs. Now I can't stand watching the San Antonio Spurs because of Popovich. Yeah, I just shut up and coach, man. Just coach the team. I don't need to hear your political views, bro. Like,
100%.
That's, I mean, it's unfortunately the reality. They've taken the fun out of it. I'm not going to say we as a society have taken the fun out of everything because we want to be offended. Everybody, for some reason, needs to be offended by something or needs to offend somebody. And it's like, when we say shut up and play or shut up and coach, it's not a term of endearment. We're not trying to be racial. We're just trying to say, listen, I work my ass off 50, 60, 70 hours a day. This is my day off to disconnect from the world, shut everything down, and put the game on. That's what I want to watch. I don't want to see Stephen A. Smith on here screaming about how JJ Redick is a white guy coaching the Lakers. I don't give a shit. Is he qualified? Probably not. I don't care. I don't like the Lakers. but I don't care that he's white or black or anything. I don't care if Colin Kaepernick wants to kneel. That's your fucking business, dude. Whatever. Don't talk about it every 35 seconds because then you start pissing people off and it starts generating more engagement. And now it's a thing. And it's like, and now we got this whole racial divide amongst the NFL. And it's just like, God, like, guys, y'all had any idea how none of this existed in war? This is why so many guys stay in and go back time and time again. Because
you're all brothers and
bro, I'm going to tell you right now, that was the most diverse room I've ever lived in. And it was literally me, a Hispanic guy, and a black guy. And we were all from different walks of life. And we played spades every night.
Yep. You know, that's the beauty of it, right? We never saw the colors, right? We just saw that we had a brother and a sister right next to us. That's all we saw. And it's just like when you add race to everything, as much as, they're to a certain extent, you got to talk about race, but I don't think you got to bring it up for everything. For every little thing, you got to bring up race. And it's just like, you're making an issue out of something that you shouldn't even making it an issue, right? And you take away, like we're talking about sports, you know, people that say that, you know, there should be more black guys in hockey, which is crazy. It's like, come on, if they don't want to play the sport, that doesn't mean that they're being racist by not playing it. Like, they just don't want to play it.
Hey, we got it. There's a white cornerback that got drafted this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's racist.
Wow. This went south real quick. All right. Well, this was probably one of the wildest podcasts we've had. This is the 9th episode. And of course, a lot of them are a lot more organized. But this was by far the best one. And it's good because it wraps up the end of Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's important. You know, I got this thing with a bunch of my buddies that I serve with that we call it buddy checks, and we check in on each other pretty regularly. So I encourage you, if you're listening or if you're watching, to check out Frontline Strong, check out what the program's about, and just call around and do a buddy check. Check in on your friends because you don't know if they're pulling over that car right there at that moment. You don't know what they're going through. Everybody experiences different things in life, and we all just need to do a better job looking out for each other. And I'm not just talking about the veteran community because it's police officers, it's paramedics, it's firefighters, it's everybody that dons a uniform that ultimately will step across that line to protect you. And you need to look out for them too, just the same. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Antonio, so glad you came on.
Yes,
We're
sir.
definitely going to do this again. I'm really, really grateful to have heard your story and listen to what you're doing to help out. And Carlos, it's okay that you were in the Navy. It's okay that you didn't deploy. I still love you.
Thank you.
And I will be
Appreciate it.
here for you. If you need to talk about it, call him.
But there's a lot of people out there like me.
The survivor's remorse
Yeah.
is very real.
Yeah.
Like, it's a legit thing. Like, it's
Well, one thing that I was going to bring up before we go is
Yeah.
I think a lot of civilians just don't understand, and they don't necessarily want to open their mind to it. They're just like, you're just being weak or whatever. Like, no, like you civilians out there that's never been in the military, just open up and listen. Like we have so many problems going inside. We just don't say it, but you can see the signs. You can always see the signs.
Yes, sir.
Always. But until next time, we'll be back in here, 2 weeks?
probably 3 weeks because I got a busy week
Vacation?
next week. And no, 2 weeks. 2 weeks because the week after that, I will be in Las Vegas for my 40th birthday.
There
There you go.
You gonna say anything before?
No, I'm good.
All right. till
Thank
next
y'all so
time.
much.
See y'all later.
See y'all later.